A saxaholic, and I'll explain that when we get to the present. Sax, S-A-X. I'll get to that when we go to the present. I started the VUC, which was the Asterisk Users Conference in 2007. It became something much more general. We won't go on and on about that. Some of you know it, some of you don't. VUC.me, Visions Under Construction. And some of these visions are going to be talked about today. Some of them are under construction, some of them are kind of realized. So, Randy, and next, you're all going to just pass the mic down and say who you are and what you're doing, or anything else.
Okay.
You.
No, I'm not. Okay. Hi, my name's Keith Milner. I'm a telecoms consultant. I run my own company, and I've basically been in telecoms in doing almost anything you can think of for the last 29, 30 years. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corrado Mella. I'm originally from Italy, but I live in Scotland. I run a small telecommunications company, but I've done practically everything you can think under the sun with telecommunications, starting from V21 modems. So I'm a bit old in the tooth.
Yeah, I'm Yufei Tao. Originally, I'm from Beijing in China, but I've moved to UK since 1995 to do my PhD and in analog filter design a few years, and then a few years in acoustics. And then I was like 2 years programmer doing mainly audio codecs. And then I settled down on SIP and the Kamailio stuff, which is quite sticky. I think I'll stay here for many years to come. Yeah.
Is it working? I'm Robert Pierce. I have a VR services company here in Berlin, and wow, I've also had I think I've worked in every single kind of job in entertainment, from talent to production. I'm from Los Angeles. I moved here last year, and yeah, I'm a sort of humanist that is also a futurist, and I'm very concerned with ethical policy and sort of the state of tech as it is right now, and how we are responsible for crafting a safer, sort of better quality life for people in the future. Yeah, that's good.
My name is Matt Kendricks. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Right now I actually run a company called D Open Source, and we do VoIP consulting. But the thing that gets me the most passionate is about this project called DSIP Router, which is really a GUI that sits on top of Kamailio. And I'm really passionate about getting other people into VoIP, because kids aren't graduating from school saying, hey, I want to be a VoIP engineer. They actually are just focused on APIs. And I think a lot of them, they definitely want to understand the underpinnings, but I think sometimes when they approach something such as Kamailio, which you really need to be kind of a SIP expert at first, they get kind of scared of it. So I'm really passionate about having a project that gets more people into Kamailio.
I'm Joachim, originally Belgian, living in Bulgaria nowadays. Well, I'm still Belgian, but okay, so I live in Sofia. I'm one of the founders of Zuiper. We make soft phones and SDKs for pretty much every operating system and platform out there. I started out as somewhat of an Asterisk consultant, but I think it's been more than 10 years that I've touched any Asterisk machine myself. We have people doing that for us now. I did a little bit of experimentation last year about blockchain, so I think there's a talk that involves some blockchain next year as well, tomorrow as well. And well, that's about it.
And hello, last but not least, I'm James. Don't be fooled by my boyish, youthful looks. I'm actually quite old. I started off with communications at the age of 13. Somebody gave me an old World War II tank radio and said, there you are, lad, make that work. So I did. And after that, I ended up in the British Army as a regular officer. Spent most of my time in Germany and doing very technical things and waving at the Russians quite a lot. Actually served here in Berlin. Spent 22 years doing that, retired in 2001, and started a second career doing, well, initially VoIP type things, but then after that I've got into mobile. And apparently, I'm quite dangerous.
As James is going to be doing the dangerous demos tomorrow, or hosting it anyway. I mentioned dial-pad and my very first experience with VoIP, which was, as far as VoIP goes, was pretty bad. The ham radio thing, VoIP. And then another thing I want to ask is, how many of you were alive in 1974? That's already more hands, right? 1974. Not that many. God, you guys are kids. There's like 4 people out there. Anyway, that's still a long time ago, and I'm mentioning these long years ago because in 1974 I toured Europe in a band, and I needed to call home. So I'm in Germany, I think it was Germany actually. Needed to call Los Angeles. I talked for a few minutes. There was an $80 phone bill waiting for me, $80. Now again, zoom forward to today, and we have 25 ways we could make that call for free. First one that comes to mind, Google Voice. Dial-pad and things like dial-pad that are more enterprise, but still, you could be using dial-pad, you could be using SIPGate if you're in Germany, and the call would cost what? Nothing if you have a subscription. But even if you had nothing, I mean, it's still, you're talking about maybe 10 cents for a phone call, for a quick phone call to the States. So that's my past. I'm going to go to the present next time. We'll go back around, same direction, or should we start with the other? Let's start with James again. But you already said your thing, so.
Have I?
Move on to the next.
Well, no, what I used to do when I was
present.
out engineering things, I always used to phone home. I used to phone my mum using all these strange communication systems, military satellite systems and HF voice circuits via the Air Force relay stations and submarine cables and plugging into German military boxes in the middle of forests and things like that. Huge amounts of fun, but you don't want to hear about that, do you? No.
Not necessarily.
No. Anyway, Zoa.
Next to Zoa. Zoa needs no introduction. He said Zoiper, but you may not have caught it. The promo, so I'll do the commercial. Zoiper.
Yes. What was the question?
Your continuation of your first experience with. You didn't say what your first experience?
The first experience with VoIP was as an Asterisk consultant. Well, shit, before that even. I started out with OpenH 323. Did anybody ever hear from that or use it? Yeah. We were there. So that gradually moved on to Asterisk with some channel driver for OpenH 323.
Did you do FreeWheel?
I think I tried it maybe once. I don't know.
Didn't do FreeWheel dial?
And then, well, the thing you say about the cheap calls, so I was living in Bulgaria. Communications to Belgium was quite expensive as well, so we ended up having some SIM gateway and then some caller ID detection, and then I had to input some passcode. This was what we did to have cheaper calls back then.
That's it? Okay, and Mac, you told me a little bit of your story, so go ahead.
Yeah, so my story was kind of interesting because, so growing up in Detroit, my dad worked in the plants, and he said, son, I don't know anything about this computer thing, but it's going to be big one day. And this was in 1984, so I was 10 at that time. So he bought me a VIC-20, a Commodore VIC-20. I don't know if anybody knows what that, raise your hands if you know what a Commodore VIC-20 is. All right, more than what I thought. And then I somehow convinced him to get me a modem. It was a 300 baud modem, and it was the slowest thing ever, but it was the fastest thing for me. I didn't have any friends that did this, so the only way I could get out and understand how to use this computer was by to connect to other people. And I know that wasn't necessarily VoIP, but that was my first entry into communications. And I fell in love with it because I could communicate with people across the world. I ran a BBS. That's a bulletin board service so I convinced my parents to get me a phone line, so it went on from there. So that's how I kind of got started.
Fantastic.
So I'm even younger than that. So my father was an officer, and he did technology communications, satellite communications in the Air Force for a long time, and then worked for Honeywell and then GTE. And so as a kid growing up in the 80s, I was always taking the computers apart or whatever. The first computer that I had was an Epson Equity 3. It was a 386, and like whenever that was, and that's also painful to remember. But I think the first, and it sort of was the same way, you know, with VoIP stuff. It wasn't necessarily, that wasn't my first exposure to sort of intercontinental, transatlantic, whatever communication. That was for me some 28.8, you know, modem around like circa 89, 90. And at that point in time, almost concurrently was the advent of America Online free hours of internet usage. So I too ran a bulletin board service pre what they used to call web rings, which is you know content driven, community oriented stuff. And for me, it was through something called MUDs, which were actually text-based gaming. So at that point in time, I was playing games or there was limited voice chat ability there, which was basically like recording a file and then sending it, and sort of like really ultra delayed communication. But yeah, that was probably what, 93, 92, 93. Yeah, so.
I didn't have a very early start in this field, but I think the first time I ever got my hands dirty in this field was when I was doing a job with my previous job, and then we were developing some embedded C system, and then so I was writing some SIP client software for that, and then we put that on the set-top box connected to the TV, and we have a remote control with like 3 big buttons, so that some people who don't bother with computers, like patients or elderly, can use that. Yeah, and then in that case, I messed with the server end as well, which was Kamailio. Well, it was something else before, but there was a problem with the TCP stack, so we switched to Kamailio and then never looked back.
Right. How much time do you have?
1 minute.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. Starting from V21 modems and Sinclair ZX Spectrum or ZX81 through VIC-20 and Commodore 64, and the adapter to do a Prestel system that was available in Italy before, called Videotel, similar to Minitel in France, probably similar to something else that there was in Germany. Doing engineering for that for Philips in Italy, making a bucket with that. Then moving into engineering Videotel and running a bulletin board system running on Videotel, the second most largest.
Everybody ran Bill. Apparently, everybody's running BBS here.
Yeah, but that was 1987, just out of my service in the military. Then after that, a lot more of telecommunications and telcos. And then I decided to move to Scotland, and my family, mom, dad, and all family was in Italy. So there was a motivation to look into a way to save money. And I came across a device from Germany, from AVM, the Fritzbox, that had voice over IP telephony in. And I got one of the first accounts from SIPGate with an Italian, a UK number before even having a landline, and another number from an Italian provider, MessageNet, so my parents could call me at their own rates. And that was my introduction to voice over IP out of necessity. But I clicked on that. It was 2004 when I moved, and I thought, well, this is something that is going to get big, so I better get my head into that. And that's where everything else spun off and where I am now.
And that's how you made your first 3 billion lira.
Possibly.
Keith, I have the quick question, but before the lightning round, you have anything?
Right. Yeah, so my background, very similar. I started off with a TRS-80 computer at the age of about 14, and graduated to BBC Micro. So my first experience of telecommunications stuff was modems, again, V21 modems, with Prestel and CFAX over-the-air broadcast data. and so I kind of worked through that. Didn't run a bit BBS, but I used them a lot. At college, I studied telecommunications technology and ended up working an apprenticeship for Marconi Instruments, doing some of the equipment which was used for testing and that the army used a lot of for spectrum analyzers and signal generators and stuff. After my degree, I got a job. My first graduate job was with Cable and Wireless in the UK, which was a company that some may have heard of, called Mercury Communications back then. And I ended up working on voice services. So it was all digital TDM exchanges and the switching architectures, and basically building services and signaling system number 7 and DAS and DPNSS and Q931 and all that sort of stuff. My first exposure to VoIP probably was around about 95, when we were approached at the company I was working for then, Colt, by Cisco, who basically were showing off what they were doing with H323 at the time. But my first actual hands-on stuff was probably around about 98, when we started implementing some H323 based VoIP services, VoIP trial services on the network, just to see what was going on. And it's basically grown since then.
Okay, I think we can get more hands up now if everybody's listening. You raise your hand if you know at least one programming language. Come on, everybody raise your hand. I know every one of you probably. Or is there someone who does not know one programming language? I don't think so. Okay. I know about 45 programming languages, and I'm equally horrible at all of them. I mean, my programs are the worst. It's strictly for prototyping, but it does work. And you're going to hate when I say that I love PHP or C for prototyping. It just somehow, it's fast, dirty, and it'll never go anywhere probably in anything I do. But I've been able to show proof of concept a lot of times. So everybody's got this one word, unless you want to say several, your languages, let's say your preferred language right now.
Oh, I don't think I've got a preferred one.
Or most common.
The one I use probably the most at the moment is actually Java through Spring Framework, because a huge amount of the stuff I do tends to be gluing stuff together and batch processing files and doing integration of data sources, and there's some good libraries in Java which I know well, and I can spin up an application that does that stuff in quite quickly.
Okay. Go on.
Well, as an old dog, I myself have quite good grasp of many languages, but I like to go down and dirty with command line stuff. So I program in Bash. In the Bash shell, I do scripting, even at the lowest level possible, because it's more efficient, or higher level programming like PHP, Python, and that stuff, command line anyway, because I mostly do these small programs to do data translation to get, I don't know, CDRs from a supplier and put them into the billing engine and get mapping of the right things around. So just data manipulation, and you don't need huge capacity of the Java.
Thank you for that one-word answer. Now you have a few words. You can.
I think the programming language I've spent longest time with is C, embedded C, actually.
Yay.
Yeah, and then I think with Kamailio, I used Lua quite a lot. It's not a full Kemi structure yet in production I've done, but I've done bits and pieces, Lua scripts, and I've written a test platform using Python. But that's the thing you pick up when you use it, and then you throw it away after you get something work. That's me.
I happen to like Kalua, but I don't think that's a programming language. Rob, you may not program.
Can we get a rim shot from somebody?
Yeah, really, we need. You may not program, I don't know, but you probably script at least.
Yeah,
right?
well, actually, so when I was just a computer science major for a hot minute at North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, C, C++. After that, I actually switched majors to cognitive science, and no jobs that I've had have required me to code. So I hire coders, or as a producer, have done a lot of stuff with that. But yeah, man, Object-oriented design. See, that's my.
I hate that stuff.
Got it.
Sorry.
Yeah, so my favorite language today would be Python because it's just simple. I can prototype really quickly. If I do want to do something that's object-oriented, kind of, it has support for classes and inheritance, kind of. So I use that mostly.
I think I've mostly been banned from programming. Nobody wants me to program. Yeah, we have people doing everything better than I can. So I might eventually dig into some code and just try to do some troubleshooting. But I couldn't really call it any programming. It's more, let's try to see what this does. Doesn't really matter what the language is. They're all quite similar anyway if you have to look for a problem. Obviously, I won't find the big bugs, but I could find some logical issues sometimes.
James.
There's a recurring theme here coming out. And you know what? I'm the same. One thing that I learned very quickly is that there are lots of people who are hugely better than I am. So what I learned was how to delegate and empower. So for me, the most important programming language is actually English.
Very good. Well done, sir. Well done. We are now going to move to the present, and I'm going to make a very short statement about self-promo. So we're going to ask the guys from PASCOM. By the way, hand for PASCOM again. God, you guys are fantastic. Put on my
awesome
screen, please. And oh, we didn't hook up the audio after all, I guess. Well, no problem. Anyway, I said I was a saxoholic, and you can find my music. Oh, I was just going to do a quick. There's a bunch of ringtones and stuff that you can download from SoundCloud.
Yeah, free Randy Resnick ringtones.
Well, this is present day. This is present day. Right. That's it.
There's no escape.
So we see this dangerous demo. What's up? Okay. I'm going to wait for you to be ready to ride the volume if it's too loud. Ready?
Go on, press the button.
Oop. Nice. Beautiful demo there, Randy. Just going to hit this at random. You want a ringtone, funky ringtone. There's 20 of them. Here's another. Familiar or yeah, you have. Hey. Seduce your heart. Okay, enough of that. The point is, saxoholic.me. You can listen to the tunes. A lot of them you can download. Somebody asked me, I forgot who. One of you asked me why my music is no longer available on Apple, on iTunes.
I'm sorry I asked you that. I really
A couple of
did.
people have asked me, and the fact, first of all, Google Play Music is no longer. Google doesn't do Play Music anymore. And also, these listings cost money, and Apple, as I'm sure you know, takes 30% as well. So I just put it all on free. It's the music, most of the composed music, it's either right now that I'm composing it or several years ago. So it's all free, it's all available online. And you can find most of it if you want to just listen to it on SoundCloud.com/Randulo. That is what I'm doing now. It has nothing at all to do with Kamailio, which is the way it's pronounced, I think, actually, or Kamailio. And so, you know, that's what I'm doing right now. We're going to go back to Mr. Bodie.
Yeah, I'm just looking for
We're going to go this way.
Strangely enough, Randy, I
Yes.
have ringtones too.
Oh, good. It may not be royalty free. Anyway, you guys are
and,
now going to say what you're doing in the present.
Do you remember this?
It's a true phone. No, it's a true phone. Voice over IP, that means calls
But you're not doing that now, so it's disqualified.
It's a blooming
Next.
true phone.
Yeah, do you remember that one? That was a hit years ago.
I'm afraid
and
I
I
do.
remember playing that, and I can't stop it now. And people would look at me and say, "What is he on?" But
Yeah, really.
but at least they remembered it. And there was a video that went with it with a paralytic cow. If you remember that, do you remember that one? Yeah, the mad cow. We must get it. We'll put it up because it was totally bizarre. Anyway, sorry. What was the question, Randy?
That was it.
Oh.
Give it over to Zoa now. Zoa, today, what are you doing besides being here? What's going on exciting at Zuiper?
Lots of things. Making lots of new wrappers for different programming languages for the SDKs. Very exciting, very exciting. Yeah, most of the time we just spend interoperability testing still and fixing bugs there. Massive reorganization, and looking into new ventures, looking into different approaches, because I feel like we're all still a bit stuck in the 80s with telephone systems. It didn't really change. I mean, you have a phone, you dial the number, it makes a call, but it doesn't, integration-wise, it's not really what it could be, so we're looking into some changes there. And that's what we are looking at professionally. You know, that answers your question.
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
Matt?
Yep, no problem. So for me, is like I talked about, DSIP routers, the kind of thing I'm kind of focused on. And really, right now, we're focused on really getting our integration pipeline, like our continuous integration pipeline, up to speed. We built a lot of new features now that kind of help people. Trying to get more people into the project, so we added an API layer. So I'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow when I do my talk. And probably the other thing I guess we're focused on is really just figuring out how to deploy to the cloud and make it easier for people to deploy to the cloud. So those are the things.
Okay, we're going to put Rob's website on while he explains what he's doing, because he's doing a whole completely different thing. We just have the homepage. There it is.
Oh,
Rob.
yeah.
And by the way, Rob, let me introduce Rob is Berlin-based. So if you're in Berlin, I won't ask for a show of
Holding
hands, don't worry.
Fleet
If you're in Berlin, though, he's going to tell you about that, and then also, of course, worldwide. Rob.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think like a lot of people these days, I sort of think faster than I speak, and I do a lot of things at the same time, and I enjoy it. Interdisciplinary for life. So yeah, right now, I guess last year, it sort of occurred to me that after reading Gartner, Greenlight, and everybody over the last couple of years, and looking at the amount of investment that's going into the VR, AR, mixed reality space, trying to understand how important it is to put the human experience first before we start making tech for tech's sake, or having purpose and sort of keeping ethics in mind. I want to, through this company, this is old hardware. This is not irrelevant, but a lot of old hardware is what you're seeing there. But ultimately, helping people understand who they are as human beings, how their senses work in concert to inform their experience as humans, and how we can use tech and definitely telecommunication, communication to enhance that and to reinforce that positively moving forward. My sort of long shot, moonshot is that once we do have more edge computing and real 5th generation of Wi-Fi, I am very interested in looking at developing language tech in the augmented reality, mixed reality space, so that we can have, meaningful and better tailored to how humans learn, access to language learning ability. And yeah, I think that's, again, rooted in that same idea of ethics, people first, how does tech benefit us?
Perfect. And during the cocktail, Rob has brought some things he can show you.
Right.
So we'll see that.
This goes right up to, I think, a little break, and then we're gonna do. There's booze and stuff out there. I brought, my hardware that I'm using right now is the Oculus Go. If you guys have not had a VR experience, by all means, please come by. If you like wine, or I was like a pretty famous sommelier dude in LA for a while, so I did a turn doing that. So I have a pretty good skill set in that world as well. So come out there, find me. I'm the tall kid with VR stuff. There's not many of us.
Yeah, you could just ask him about wine, too, if you want.
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
No, I'm just...
Besides being here, I said. Yeah.
yeah, apart from that, when I go back, I'm doing some consultancy for myself, trying to get some myself up to speed as well. There are so many new technologies exciting. And with Kamailio, I think I'll probably move my projects into Kemi infrastructure, so that probably will simplify a lot of my existing things. And apart from that, I think the machine learning, artificial intelligence is something really exciting. So hopefully I'll get some chances to get into that field. I'm doing some learning myself online at the moment.
Great.
Well, besides running a company that leaves very little time to do things that you like to do, I am really into the realm of vision under construction, sorry, the VUC, to try to stimulate people to get their visions forward, to speak about what they want, to speak what they need, rather than what they are told that they need. A bit of in the ethics, like Rob is talking about, to get the technology back from corporations and back from the big player, back again to the ground where we say what we need and we deploy it, because we have the tools to do that. We have rudimentary AR, augmented reality. We remember the very expensive Google Glass. That was a tool for augmented reality. If you have Google Maps on your phone and you rotate the phone while you're walking, you get augmented reality already in your hands. So there are tools out there that could enhance your day and help you communicate with others. Google Assistant that can translate for you on the fly, whenever you want to communicate. So my aim is to bring the technology back to the roots, to the people, for the people to exploit. Bring it back from the corporations.
I have a slight correction to what you just said. I'm sorry, Corrado, but I feel obliged to correct you by saying that you don't have the AR on Google Maps while you're walking, because if you look up while you're walking, it pops up a thing saying, don't do this, look where you're going and put your phone back down. So yeah, it's pretty basic, by the way. I had high hopes and I clicked the AR button. It has to be walking directions, I'm pretty sure. Click the AR icon. The one thing it does, to be specific, it will show you the street name in front of you. And you know what? In countries like France, where half the time they're not written, they're not there, that's actually useful. Keith?
Well, it was very aspirational. Mine's much more tedious. I'm currently working for a couple of MVNOs where I basically design, build, help run bits of their network. I've got one MVNO who's basically runs a multi-IMSI solution with US and UK IMSIs. Some of the slides that I stole them from you. Some of James's slides earlier he actually stole from me from a presentation I did on that. But I've basically been building MVNOs for the last sort of 8 or 9 years, and I've been working on various other mobile messaging, billing, you name it, sort of on mobile for probably about 15. And I'll just carrying on doing more of that, really. And I've got another customer coming up who's basically asking me to have a look at their Kamailio installation and make sure it's working correctly, because I don't think it is, because the previous guys left. So that's another job. And I've been talking to this young man at the end here as well.
Very young, yeah.
Yeah, about the Chalk Valley stuff.
It's cracking, isn't it?
There was a whole presentation on that, if my memory serves.
Fingers in lots of pies, basically.
And there's another thing coming up tomorrow. Let me just say, I have the next question. This is the last question. We have about 10 minutes left. And we can divide that however you like. But I'm going to ask the question, then I'm going to talk, as I want to do occasionally, because you're going to need a minute to think about this. And my question to you is, this is the future. What would you like to see improved? You can also say how, and maybe we can patent it or something. But what current thing in life, or what future thing, do you see needs to be improved, and in what level? I'll give you a simple one, and then I'm going to talk about something. I'm just going to give some URLs and things. Just as an example, and I wish Allison Smith was here with her IVR knowledge.
Don't we all?
IVRs are so atrocious most of the time. And one of my wishes would be, it's a pretty simple one, get your shit together. You know, I mean, this stuff is so bad. Your bank, call your bank. How many times do you have to give your numbers and your IDs, and then you get passed on to somebody? And at the end, I just did this, by the way. Oh, in fact, so keep thinking about what you're going to say, because this is what I'm giving you the time for. I had to call Social Security. That's the pension fund in the United States. It says it's open from 7 a.m. Eastern time to blah, blah, blah. So I know it's 7 a.m. It's 1 p.m. here in France. I'm calling for hours. What I didn't realize is that they detect caller ID, and they saw that I was calling from a California number, even though I'm in France. So they didn't open until 7 a.m. California time. But when I finally got them, They ask you for your ID about 700 times, and then when you finally get through to somebody who then asks you, and of course each time it's, this call may be recorded for quality control purposes. And by that time you're swearing and hoping that they're recording it. And then the finality of this phone call was, oh yeah, it says that on the website, but we don't actually do that. So, you know, having suffered through 20 minutes, oh, also, by the way, in order to speak to somebody, your wait time is estimated at 75 minutes. Would you like us to call you back? So naturally, they called me back, and the call didn't work because it's Google Voice or whatever. Anyway, that's mine. That was just stalling. We'll go back towards, from Keith. You ready, Keith, for something
yeah.
you want improved?
I think so, yeah. I've got a number of bugbears, but probably my number one thing is if you go back to around about 2003, I guess, when VoIP was starting to really pick up as a capability, everyone was talking about the promises that it held, and one of those promises was that we would perhaps start to lose E164 numbers and start using something much more sensible. And what that seems to have gone away, and now we've got messenger clients and things like that which work off of E164 numbers for no good reason at all, because they're nothing to do with the telephony network. But it just seems to be this trend amongst messaging companies that because WhatsApp's done it, everyone else has to do it as well. And I think it's dumb, and it stops people who don't necessarily have a phone or want to use it from a phone from using those products.
There is an alternative, though, usually.
There can be, not always, no.
But I think they do that for the data capture of getting your number, so they can sell it or use it to send you messages or whatever, no?
No, I'm not entirely sure, but there's not really any good technical reason to do it, because there are lots of messenger clients around which don't do it and work perfectly well.
Right.
Can I bring forward?
Money.
No.
Damn it.
The elephant in the room that nobody here today has talked about, IPv6. Maybe. Yeah, I'd like to see IPv6 deployed so we finally can have, instead of a number, our own IP address for every device we have. So it's secure and is identifiable. That would be my because it flattens the structure of internet. There's no NAT, there's nothing. It resolves a large number of problems, and flattening it also, you have your own public IP, it empowers you because it brings you to the same level of the public IPs of the big corporations. I'm going back again into that. So it democratizes the internet because everyone has the same access, and probably brings.
Get this?
Oh, there you go.
I'm sorry you couldn't make it, buddy.
Probably brings that level of secure access and internet neutrality, net neutrality we are trying to keep. IPv6, please.
I think from my experiences trying to work with open source software, the biggest, most annoying problem is the recognition of how well the open source software can work, actually. And a lot of times you hit decision makers insisting buying the expensive kit no matter what. So yeah, I don't know if there's a solution how we address that, but I think the publicity of the open source software, the merit of it should be known by more people. Yeah, that's my thought.
So, yeah, wow, I think that there's going to be some overlap because this is kind of on the. Are we still talking about the future? I guess we're like, yeah, okay. So for my concerns, IPv6 is, it can't happen fast enough simply because, when we start talking about, or when I'm sitting back and looking at the landscape of how things are consumed right now data-wise, and it's like, there are inevitabilities. The world is going to continue to get smaller, closer, whether you live in Vietnam under a communist regime or not. It doesn't matter. These things are inevitable, and the forces are more compelling than ever. So another thing is like this in the face of things like social media 2.0, like nobody's really even talking about that. What is that? What does that mean? I mean, we've got Discord is using some great stuff right now, but you know, uniformity again is a question. Democratizing the internet, making things you know, available, safe for everyone, and especially when, you know, for my purposes, trying to design something that is usable universally everywhere, that can adhere to GDPR as well as whatever other countries' data protection policies are or are not. So, yeah.
So this actually goes to your blockchain thing you're talking about. So one of the things that really bugs me, and I don't know how it works in Europe, but the actual all these spam calls. So the do not call list. So I did a talk at OSCON, which is the O'Reilly conference last year, and I built an example of how we could use blockchain where the do not call lists are actually on the blockchain. So it's a distributed database basically. And I actually use Kamailio as the mechanism to dip into that. So I basically joined Kamailio to this blockchain basically, and basically whenever a call came through, I could dip into it to see if it was on the do not call list and things of that nature. I just like to just see more of that. I just think this is a great use case for blockchain technology. So I would like to see more uses. I would like to see more integration of telephony and blockchain usage.
I would like to see a bit less restrictions on all kinds of platforms where you can tinker a bit more with it yourself. For example, I don't know, does anybody have like Apple CarPlay, for example?
Oh, yeah.
You're very limited to what you can do there. If you make an application, then you have to adhere to those rules. If you don't get approval, then you can't be on there, and they have full control over what application makes it or not. But it's with other things as well. If you look at what hardware became obsolete, something that shouldn't really require some hosted service with some Logitech device. Does anybody know what I'm referring to? I think it was a remote control or something that stopped working because it didn't. Sorry?
Harmony?
Yeah, yeah. What is it? Is some remote control or something? So it stops working if you don't have a. Well, if they stop the service, it just stops working. And I think it's with a lot of things. Lots of interfaces seem very weird, like domotica systems, and you can't change them. You're stuck with what they have. They have this bug while the module is no longer supported. So that's it. You're stuck with that. But that domotica thing is going to be there for the next 10 years probably. The same with car infotainment systems. Why can't every vendor just do some over-the-air update to give you something more recent? Why do you have to be stuck with the GPS from 10 years ago if your car is 10 years old?
And finally,
the one thing that we never have enough of is time. And so what I want is a bot or electronic service, an agent that sits between me and the rest of the world and saves me time. So if you want to call me, you have to get through my bot. Think of it, it's a bit like Iron Man has Jarvis. You know, when he puts on his Iron Man suit, he has Jarvis who does all the low-level stuff, like flying the suit and shooting the aliens. And then Iron Man is able to deal with the higher level things that, like getting the girl, yeah, which is much more interesting. I mean, who wants to be bothered with shooting aliens all the time? So that's what I want, and it will be a solution to the problem that Randy has. Randy always says, James, you've got 20 numbers, and I can never get you on any of them. Well, at least if you can talk to my Jarvis, you can do that. But the reason you can't get hold of me, Randy, is that I may not want to talk to you.
I get that. That's why I rejected your duo call yesterday.
Yeah.
That's it. It's exactly 6:30, and I want to make a note, Daniel, that we actually finished on time. What? Oh, sure. A question to the panel. Well, I figured people would just be blurting them out. I thought people would be blurting them out. Who has a question? Everybody's going no, so. I just wanted to make sure that, because I don't think it's ever happened to anybody here, right?
Randy on time. Ooh.
That's it. Okay, I want to thank the great panel this year. Thank you, and I hope you'll thank them too. Thank you, guys. Fabulous. Really good.